It's a tradition of the St. Louis County Board to hold a moment of silence in honor of those who serve, protect, and serve this great nation, and also in honor of those innocent victims of war and violence throughout this world. We will follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you all for being on time when we are up here in this gorgeous part of St. Louis County. With that, I will turn to Clerk Chapman. Please take the roll.
Commissioner Joel. Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Olson. Commissioner Rubina. Commissioner Stout.
Here.
Commissioner Eubanks. And Sheriff Commissioner Nelson.
Here. At this time, citizens will be allowed to address the board on items that are not on the agenda.
For items that are on the agenda, citizens will be allowed to address the board at the time a motion is on the floor. I know I at least have one distinguished gentleman who wants to speak to us this morning. Julian, would you like to be first?
Thank you, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was not warned about that. Commissioner,
Before Julian talks.
I apologize. Julian, we'll be with you in a second. Commissioner Rukavina, please introduce your mayor.
Our very distinguished mayor wants to welcome us, who works hard here and also works hard at his day job out at the Netley or Boyce Fork Reservation. So take it away.
Yeah, so on behalf of City Board, we want to welcome St. Louis County Commissioners. We really appreciate the fact that you travel throughout the county and come up this far to hold your meetings. It gives, everybody a chance to stop in and see how your meetings go, how they're run. Thank you, Tom, for everything you've done for our area. Really appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you.
Very good. And I apologize. Commissioner Rukavina would normally forewarn me, but he was too busy eating donuts at Patton's, okay? So.
You guys were eating, I was talking.
Okay. Drinking coffee at Patton's, I'm sorry. All right, next. Someone who really doesn't need an introduction, but Julian, would you please give us a little bit of an update? I understand you have one.
That's right, Joe.
And this is Julian Brosnowski.
Mr. Chair, try to spell it.
I'm not even going to try.
I want to thank you again, echo what Joel said, that it's nice to have the county board here meet in Orr, and I now live in Orr, and I sold the farm, so now I'm a city slicker. But yeah, now I know Keith's a farmer, and the state legislator, since Rukavina got out, they passed a law down there that after the 15th of August, you can't make these big round bales anymore. And the environmentalists, extreme environmentalists pushed that law through. And so it's going to be tough on the farmers up here. And maybe you want to know why they passed that law?
Julian, why did they pass a law that crazy?
Well, because they didn't, the round bales and the feeding the cows, they're not getting a square meal. So, okay, we'll leave it at that now. Okay, but anyway, I'm here because the county board over the years has put in money towards these trout streams to rejuvenate them up here in northern part of the St. Louis County. And over 40 years, the DNR let the trout streams go and the beaver dams took over, killed all the trout out. And now we've removed the beaver dams and are planted trout in Lost River, Gilmore Creek, Ash River, Chimmount Creek, and now it's so rewarding to see fathers and mothers and taking their kids out catching trout, and grandfathers taking the grandkids out catching trout, and this is what I was looking for. It's rewarding. They can't go out texting on a phone because they got to hold a fish pole, and so I want to thank the county for helping, getting matching funds. We use Lassard Sam's funds too, and so appreciate that and appreciate the time to give a little update. The trout streams are very viable now, so thank you.
Julian, we want, on behalf of the St. Louis County Board, thank you for your hard work with the departments in
something I
getting this
think-
done. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I know
Commissioner Rukavina.
it's not customary to comment, but, you know, Julian got some of our environmental trust fund money with your help, and then later on my help to refurbish one of the trout streams on his property. And I think he worked with both the DNR and the federal U.S. Forest Service, which in the past he often didn't work with them that well. But but I watched the Duluth commissioners particularly know that Julian ran for the county commissioner, 30 years ago, Julian? Yeah. And he almost won. I mean, coming from this remote part shows you how popular he is. He was on the board up here of the electrical co-op for years and years. So now that you're a city slicker in the big city, I wish you all the best. And you notice that Julian can't text with that one hand. You know, he can't hitchhike either. So. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Rukavina, and again, thank you, Julian.
Commissioner Nelson, I didn't sign up. Could I say a few words?
I will. I am getting to that next. I'll get back to my sign-up sheet here. Is there anyone else who cares to address the county board on items not on the agenda? Please step up, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dan Manick. I live in Cook, Minnesota. I would just like to thank the county board. I am running for commissioner, but I'm not going to campaign here. Those big green signs we see up by those highway projects, thank you for that transportation sales tax. I do work for Couchiching County Highway Department, and I'm so jealous of those green signs on these St. Louis County roads, and what a boost it is to catch up on some of our St. Louis County roads are, I won't say fantastic because I will lose votes if I say fantastic, but they are in very good condition. Coming from a highway employee, thank you very much for that, for the road conditions. We just need to get a little bit of pressure from St. Louis County Commissioners to have Couch get that sales tax. So any influence you can push up north, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I drove one of those awful roads up in Commissioner Rukavina's district just a few days ago, going into Ash River. I had to slow down. The road was in deplorable condition. So and then I was getting bombarded by neutrinos as I was driving. So it's a tough trip in there, okay? I'm giving Commissioner Rukavina a hard time because the road was just redone and it's gorgeous, okay? So is there anyone else here who would care to address the board on items not on the agenda? Again, for items that are on the agenda, you will be allowed to speak to the board when the motion is on the floor. Seeing none. And time, 9:42. It being 9:40 or thereabouts, we do have a public meeting pursuant to Resolution 18-419 adopted June 26, 2018, to initiate the process by which the county petitions the Minnesota Office of Administrative Hearings for the creation of the Ash River Sanitary District. I will turn to the clerk to read the introduction and the rules for this public hearing. Clerk Chapman.
This public hearing is being conducted pursuant to the standing rules of the county board. A copy of the standing rules is available upon request. A formal record will be made of this proceeding. Accordingly, we request that all speakers sign in and state your name and address at the beginning of your testimony. Both verbal and documentary evidence will be accepted by the board. The order for the meeting will be as follows. First, administration will make the initial presentation. Second, representatives of other governmental entities may appear and give testimony. Third, supporters of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Next, opponents of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. And lastly, other comments or evidence from the public. Commissioners may question witnesses at the end of their testimony or at the end of all testimony.
Thank you, Clerk Chapman. The next piece on this order is administration for the initial presentation. Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. Commissioners, Director St. Lawrence will be making the presentation on behalf of administration. There is a very good and crisp overview of the process and the timeline, which Director St. Lawrence will revisit in his presentation. And I did want to note that we are currently working through and working on a grant from the MPCA that is significant, that looks at the planning and design development for the proposed or potential community sanitary sewer project. So with that, I think there's a lot to take into consideration, just noting, of course, that this is in an unorganized township, so there's a much higher level of engagement and responsibility of the county board in that capacity. So with that, I turn to Director St. Lawrence.
Director St. Lawrence, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Chair Nelson, Commissioners. In 2009, the St. Louis County and Koochiching County entered into a joint powers agreement for the purpose of identifying and resolving environmental concerns caused by limited septic system options due to challenging geographic conditions in populated areas in and around the Voyageurs National Park. These areas included Crane Lake, Cab-Togama Township, and Ash River in St. Louis County, and the Island View area of Koochiching County. In 2010, the Joint Powers Board completed a comprehensive wastewater plan within these planning areas that revealed a significant number of older septic systems that were failing to protect groundwater and not meeting the respective counties' compliance standards. To address the environmental concerns, the Joint Powers Board sought and obtained funding to assist in the construction of community sewers for Crane Lake, Cab-Togama, and Island View, and is now directing its resources to Ash River. Beginning in 2016, the Joint Powers Board held informational meetings in the Ash River, or at Ash River, to inform residents of the proposed project. There was one meeting held in 2016. There were two meetings held in 2017, and most recently on June 20th and July 18th of this year. Earlier this year, St. Louis County authorized the acceptance of a $450,000 Minnesota Clean Water Legacy Grant and matched it, or not matched, but provided a local match of $90,000 for SEH Engineering, the consulting firm for the Joint Powers Board, to conduct a facility plan and systems options evaluation. The county also, through its Lands and Minerals Department, is currently working on a land exchange with the DNR to secure a 71-acre parcel identified by a soils engineering firm as having soil characteristics exceeding the requirements for on-site wastewater treatment. As addressed in earlier meetings, the creation of a sanitary district is critical to the success of the project in that it allows decisions regarding the ongoing development, management, and operation of the system to be made at the local level, with support and guidance provided by the Joint Powers Board. Earlier this year, the chair of the Joint Powers Board and Commissioner Rukavina sent a letter to 17 homesteaded property owners in the proposed Ash River Sanitary District boundary to assess their level of interest serving on a 5-member sanitary district board. 7 residents responded, indicating their willingness to serve. Recently, the Joint Powers Board and Ash River property owners requested the county board schedule a public meeting to initiate the process by which the county will petition the Minnesota Office of Environmental Assistance for the creation of the Ash River Sanitary District. as mentioned by Administrator Gray and Commissioner Nelson, through Board Resolution 18419 dated June 26th, the public meeting was scheduled for today. The creation of the sanitary district is addressed in Minnesota State Statute 442A.04, which requires a petition to the Minnesota Office of Administrative Hearings for the review and consideration by their Chief Administrative Law Judge. The statute is prescriptive in identifying the documents and other information required within the petition. The first step in the petition process is to conduct a public meeting, which we're doing right now, to inform citizens of the proposed sanitary district creation. At the meeting, information must be provided per state statute to include a description of the district's proposed structure, its bylaws, its ordinances, its territory, a proposed budget or discussion on budget and charges, and a description of the territory of the proposed district, including inclusion and exclusion of all parcels. Notice of the meeting must be published for 2 consecutive weeks in a qualified newspaper, and defined under Chapter 331A, must be published within the territory of the proposed district, or if there is no qualified newspaper published within that territory, and a qualified newspaper of general circulation within or close to the territory, and must be posted for 2 weeks in each territorial unit of the proposed district and on the website of the proposed district. Notice of the meeting must be mailed or emailed at least 3 weeks prior to the meeting to all property tax billing addresses for all parcels included in the proposed district. All of the notification requirements per state statute have been met. As per the items to be discussed, the description of the district's proposed structure, again, per state statute, the governing body of the district shall be the board members or board of managers made up of 5 members who shall be voters residing within the district. The terms of the first board members elected after creation of the district shall be so arranged and determined by the electing body as to expire on the first business day in January as follows. The first 2 members would be appointed to a 2-year term that would expire the following January. 2 other members would be elected to a 3-year term, and the last or remaining member would be elected to a 4-year term. The board, the officers of the board shall consist of a chair and a vice chair who shall be members of the board, and a secretary and a treasurer who may but need not be members of the board. The first board or the board of managers will be selected should the resolution be passed, the petition to the state be approved, and the sanitary district be created. The St. Louis County Board of Commissioners would then notify the qualified voters within the sanitary district of the creation of the district and solicit requests for board membership. When the applications come in, the St. Louis County Board would review them and appoint the first 5 members to the board. Upon expiration of each term, the county board would be responsible for, again, reappointing somebody to fill their position. Having outlined the proposed structure, bylaws and ordinances, I do have copies of draft ordinances and the ordinance and bylaws at the table where the agendas for today's meetings are located. They are in draft form and draft form only because it would be up to the Board of Managers of the district to approve the official bylaws and ordinances for that respective district. The territory, we've got a map on the wall here that lays out the proposed boundaries for the sanitary district. At the time that the district boundaries were laid out, it was decided by the Joint Powers Board that all parcels within that boundary be included, and be included at this time, but ultimately it is going to be at the discretion of the new sanitary board to decide whether or not there would be any exclusions of parcels that are within the boundary. The budget, I'm going to turn the budget and charges and the financing of the project over to Colin Markison, the SEH representative, who is, again, a consultant for the Joint Powers Board. And upon conclusion, the county's next step would be, obviously, we would open up to questions from the board. But the next step in the sanitary creation process would be the adoption of the resolution before you, which includes the requirement that we submit a petition to the state along with the required documents for review by the administrative law judge. Subsequent to document review, the administrative law judge will decide whether or not to approve or deny our request. Should a resolution pass, just want to make it clear that should the resolution pass, it must be published in the official paper of the governing body adopting it, and it becomes effective 40 days after publication, unless within said period there shall be filed with the governing body a petition signed by qualified electors of the territorial unit of the proposed district equal in number to 5% of the number of electors voting in the last preceding election of the governing body. I realize I'm quoting a lot out of statute, but I want to make sure that all the items that the statute requires are addressed at the meeting have been addressed. At this time, I would like to call Colin Markison from SEH up to discuss some of the financing and budget issues associated with the project, and at the conclusion of his presentation, I would open it up for questions from the board.
Thank you, Director St. Lawrence.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we will bring Director St. Lawrence back if there are questions after the next presentation. Please come forward. State your name for the record.
Hi, Colin Markison. I'm with SEH Engineering. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. With regards to finances for the Ash River project, the project has received about $550,000 in funds through state bonding bill, through Clean Water Legacy funds, and also from St. Louis County. I'm sure the residents of the Ash River area thank you for that. Those funds will be used for completion of a report, which is called a facility plan, or a CAR. The costs of the project will be detailed a lot better after completion of that report, and we weigh out all the options of where to place pipes and how much it might cost, as well as a treatment system and those kinds of things. At this point, a very preliminary estimate of the project is about $5.5 million. It has been the stance of the Joint Powers Board in the past that these projects don't move forward until the project is at an affordable level for the residents, and that to them means around $100 per month per EDU. An EDU being an equivalent dwelling unit, which would be about the flow from one household. So it'll ultimately be up to the new sanitary board to determine whether the project should move forward, if the project is affordable for the residents. But that has been the stance of the Joint Powers Board with the projects that I've been involved with them.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions at this point of either of the presenters?
Chair
Director
Nelson,
St. Lawrence.
If I might just add that when the letter to the property owners was sent out on June 27th, within that letter it notified all property owners of this particular meeting, but it also stated that if somebody couldn't attend, that they were allowed to either send or email us correspondence related to the project. I want to just mention that I did receive one correspondence. It was provided to the members of the board yesterday, I believe. And in that, there was some concern regarding the financing of the project. There wasn't a real, didn't really state whether or not they were in support of the project or not. They just had concerns regarding the financing of it. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Director St. Lawrence. I believe all commissioners are in receipt of that letter.
Yes.
And it will be taken into account.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no questions at this point, Representatives of other governmental entities may appear and give testimony. Representatives of any other governmental agency who wishes to appear and give testimony. Seeing none. Supporters of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Are there any supporters of this proposed action who wish to appear and give testimony at this point? Seeing none. Opponents of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Are there any opponents here today who wish to appear and give testimony? Seeing none. Any other comments or evidence from the public at this point? Are there any other comments or testimony from the public at this point? Sir, please. Sir, you may make comments and ask questions. Please step to the podium. Give your name and address for the record.
My name is Robert Lindig. Address is 8108 46 1/2 Avenue North in New Hope, Minnesota.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I just had a couple questions which probably could be answered by the presenters. One, there was a reference to an equivalent dwelling unit, and I didn't catch what the definition was of the equivalent dwelling unit.
The equivalent dwelling unit is what the normal flow of effluent that would come from a home, a single-family home. And it's a number that has been established that it's an average from a single-family home. So EDU is, we love acronyms in government, I hope you understand that. But that is exactly what it is. It would be the flow of affluent from a single-family dwelling.
How does that compare to the seasonal use that we see on many of the properties on Ash River?
Now you're getting way beyond what I can answer. Do you have more questions than that? Because I will bring them forward to try and address those.
The other question related to that cost of $100 per month per equivalent dwelling unit that was stated. And is that a cost for a period of time to build the infrastructure, or is that an ongoing cost that would presumably be forever to also include the operating funds?
I will allow our folks to come forward. Okay. All right, do you have more questions than that?
I do. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to get them all on the record so that we can get them answered for you.
I recall reading from minutes or from a publication about 2 years ago that some of the properties on the south side of the Ash River would not be able to be hooked up to the actual sanitary sewer system. And I was wondering what requirements will be imposed on those properties.
Okay.
Those are the 3 questions.
Those are your 3 questions. Very good. You're not going to get a second bite at this apple. That's why I'm trying to get it all taken. Okay. Since we're at the very tail end of this, I guess we'll answer those questions at this point if we can. How did I do on the EDU, by the way?
You did great.
Very good.
Yeah, so I guess expand on that a little bit. An equivalent dwelling unit, if you were in the cities, would be about 274 gallons per day. In this area of the state, it's a little bit different. In resort areas and seasonal areas, it's even a little bit less than that because not a lot of people actually have water connected to their cabins and those kinds of things. But what it equates to is about a 2-bedroom house, flow from about a 2-bedroom house. And like Commissioner Nelson said, or Chairman Nelson said, equivalent dwelling unit is, the EDU is the acronym for that. Everything else is based off of that as far as charges. So if you have a house and a cabin, you might have 1.6 EDUs, and so on and so forth. I believe your second question was related to the monthly cost breakdown, the $100 per month. I should have expanded on that before. So the $100 per month covers both the payback of the loan to build the project, so debt service, and a operation and maintenance cost. So it covers both of those. So after the 20-year loan payment is up, a portion of that cost used to pay down the capital expense will go away. The properties on the south side of the river, I believe, was your third question. The real answer to that is we don't know how we're going to handle those yet. We're hoping that they can somehow be connected to the main system If they can't be, there may be another way to improve their sewer treatment or collection in order to get those properties in compliance along with the rest of the area. We'll know more once we're done with the report phase.
Very good.
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Ricavina.
if it's appropriate for me to, maybe talk a little bit, because I've been on this board now for 3.5 years, and, finally, we got some federal money from the Army Corps of Engineers for the Coochin County out to Island View expansion. Prior to that, almost all the money has either come from our friends down on the Iron Range from taconite money, or from Clean Water Legacy money, or from state bonding money for a national park, which always kind of stuck in my craw, that was the case. But in any event, whether it's the Kaptogama system, which is run by their township, because it's a subordinate to the township, so the township supervisors run it, or whether it's the Crane Lake, where Crane Lake started off just like Ash River. They were an unorganized township. They formed a sewer committee through the process. They started their own sewer committee, and then they became an organized township, but they're not under the town board. And each different place has a different way of, funding it. I think Crane Lake, to be quite honest, was a little over $100 because they had borrowed money from, I think, some agricultural fund. Yeah, and so they had to pay that back, but and so they had a little higher capital charge. But Kaptogama, we did not move forward until we got that fund down to about $100. And I wish that Supervisor Stegmeyer was here, or Rob Scott from Crane Lake. They could explain their charges a little better. To your question across the river, Crane Lake has a new program in there for those that are kind of remote, which those would be on the south side. They actually, I think it's, Colin helped me, for $7,500, you put down, if your system's a working system and in good shape, you put that down, they take it over. They maintain it forever. After you pay that $7,500, they maintain it forever for you as a independent sewer, like we all have, me and Keith have when we live out in the country and have our own septic system. So each each different sewer district is different, and for those that will sit on this, that are your neighbors and live out there, they would determine what those charges would be. But I'm sure we've never moved forward until we got that down to $100 for both the capital expenditure and the monthly charge. And Mark, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Crane Lake might have even lowered their capital charge a little bit, or they're thinking about it, because they've gotten money through the years from the state bonding and capital and from legacy monies and that. So they paid some of that capital expenditures off and lowered that charge a little bit. So
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
If I don't have any more, we're getting to the discussion phase, and I knew you were answering questions there, so I let that go. But before this board gets to discussion stage, I do need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Stauber, supported by Commissioner Foyle, to close the public hearing. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now, we are at the point of board discussion.
Mr. Chair, can I move
Commissioner
this?
Ricavino.
At this time, can I move the resolution?
You can, Commissioner.
Well, I will move it at this point for discussion.
And I would like to support that, being the other member on the Joint Powers Board. So it's been, and that's unusual for the chair to do that, but having worked on it for an awfully long time, it is with pride that I support that. Now, we are at board discussion. I will turn to Administrator Gray for any comments he wants to make at this point, and then, of course, it's commissioners to discuss. Administrator Gray.
Chair Nelson and Commissioners, this is, as Director St. Lawrence went through his overview, There's lots of statutory and regulatory-driven provisions here. There is, of course, an impact to the local residents. I just want to clarify that local residents are the only ones that are eligible to be on the board. It will be the responsibility of this board to make those appointments, since it's an unorganized territory, an unorganized township. And that's our responsibility. I think that as we see the funding start to pull together, what's going to come from grants, what's going to come from loans, what's, to Commissioner Rukavina's point, what's going to impact the individual payers, we'll know have a better sense of the financial model. The more grants that we can get, the lower the costs, obviously, to residents, and I think that's very significant. We also have some other options as we look at our own internal financing, the use of the Environmental Trust Fund and other things like that. So with that, the resolution before the board is to authorize Environmental Services Department Administration to prepare a petition to the Minnesota Office of Administrative Hearings for the creation of the Ash River Sanitary District. And there will be a lot of work from that point on as well that will require, and it's really important that we have local input.
Very good. I want to point out to the board that Administrator Gray didn't even slow down if we thought a train whistle was going to stop him. Didn't even slow him down.
Mr. Chair, I tried
Commissioner
to time it with CNN to come through town and honk and honk and honk, but they kind of missed it.
I thought that we had a ban on train whistles legislatively at one point in time, so I was caught off guard.
We're going to get back to subject. I apologize for my comment.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, inform the board that we've had, I believe, 4 meetings now, 5. And I will say that, and I see some of the people in the audience that have been at those meetings, that everyone's been very cordial. Questions have been asked, but there really has not been any outpouring of opposition that I've seen at any of those hearings to speak of. And the letter we got, there was some misinformation about the county raising taxes, which wouldn't be the case, which, we should pay based on our usage, which is exactly what would happen for the letter that we got concerned about this. So, this is going to be a long process, as Administrator Bray pointed out. Director St. Lawrence said it could take up to a year before the administrative law judge even approves us, or the sewer district being approved. And then at that point, we would appoint them 5 members, and then they would begin their work and try to set up their bylaws and determine which way they're going to go on this. And meanwhile, the Voyageurs National Park Joint Powers Board will be pursuing money, whether it's legacy money, whether it's bonding money, whether it's taconite money, whether it's finally the Army Corps and the federal government putting in a little money for their national park. So those would be everywhere we'd be looking. And again, to reassure anyone, we haven't moved forward on these projects, correct me if I'm wrong, Director St. Lawrence, until that number becomes affordable. So that's where we're at. And, to approve this resolution by no means we're approving any kind of sewer district up at the Ash River unorganized township. It just means the process is going to start moving forward, and the local people then at some point are going to have a say in what they do. So that's where it's at.
Thank you, Commissioner Rukavina. I think that was a really good synopsis of where we're at here today. A long time coming. Commissioner Forsman before Commissioner Rukavina, and our friends in Koochiching County. This has been a success story, folks. Commissioner Rukavina, how many millions of dollars have we brought in to finish these projects?
Over $20 million of outside money, which has been put into, a lot of construction workers, but more importantly, into making these systems that are functional, that are environmentally sound, and that, people aren't going to have to invest in septic systems. Some of these resorts have invested a lot of money. I see one of our resort owners out there. Thanks for showing up. I thought you'd come up and say a few words, but you're shy. So, she's not shy otherwise, but, but they put in a lot of money, and then because of the usage, several years later, they got to put in, and I'm not talking little money, I'm talking big money, and that's what we hope to solve that problem for them in the future. And, nobody's lake place or year-round home or resort is worth anything if they don't have a functioning septic system and it's affordable for them. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Rukavina. Any further discussion? It has been moved and supported. All those in favor of the resolution standing before you, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Commissioners, we do have a second public hearing here today. This public hearing pursuant to Resolution 18-410, adopted June 26, 2018, is to consider the issuance of an off-sale intoxicating liquor license to Echo Trail Tavern, LLC, doing business as Echo Trail Tavern in Portage Township. Again, I will turn to the clerk to read the introduction, and we will move forward with this public hearing. Clerk Chapman.
This public hearing is being conducted pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 340A, St. Louis County Ordinance Number 28, which is the liquor ordinance, and the standing rules of the county board. A copy of the standing rules is available upon request. A formal record will be made of the proceedings. Accordingly, we request that all speakers sign in and state your name and address at the beginning of your testimony. Both verbal and documentary evidence will be accepted by the board. The order for the hearing will be as follows. First, the county attorney will make the initial presentation. Second, representatives of the establishment may appear and give testimony. Third, representatives of other governmental entities may appear and give testimony. Fourth, supporters of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Fifth, opponents of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. And lastly, other comments or evidence from the public. Commissioners may question witnesses at the end of their testimony or at the end of all testimony.
Thank you, Clerk Chapman. The initial presentation for this will be made by Assistant County Attorney Mackey. I want you folks up in order to know that we brought the A-team with us today in the Assistant County Attorney. Ms. Mackey.
Mr. Chair. Commissioners, today we're here on the application for an off-sale intoxicating liquor license by Echo Trail Tavern LLC, doing business as Echo Trail Tavern. I have a public hearing packet that contains the application, the approval of Portage Township, liquor liability insurance valid through July of 2019, the notice of the Liquor Licensing Committee meeting sent to the applicant on May 16, 2018, the minutes of the June 5th Liquor Licensing Committee meeting, the liquor license checklist, public hearing resolution 18410 adopted June 26th, notice of public hearing published July 12th in the Duluth News Tribune, notice of public hearing sent to the applicant on June 27th, and finally the real estate tax record display showing that the subject property is up to date on its taxes. At the meeting on June 5th, the application was recommended for approval, and with the submission of these documents, there are no legal impediments to the approval of the application.
Thank you, Attorney Mackey. Next, representatives of the establishment may appear and give testimony. Are there any representatives of the establishment? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Nicole Diefenthaler from Echo Trail Tavern and Bike. The address is 6224 Crane Lake Road, Bike, Minnesota. I don't really have much to say, I guess.
Commissioner Jewell.
So we always ask the owners if they've read the rules and regulations related to a liquor license, and if you understand them and will abide by them.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jewell, for asking that. Any other questions by commissioners? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next, representatives of other governmental entities may appear and give testimony. Is there anyone here representing another governmental entity who wishes to appear and give testimony? Seeing none. Supporters of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Are there any supporters here today who wish to appear and give testimony? Seeing none. Opponents of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Are there any opponents of this proposed action who wish to appear and give testimony? Seeing none. Any other comments or evidence from the public at this point? Again, seeing none, a motion to adjourn the public hearing by Commissioner Rukavina, supported by Commissioner Olson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. We do have the resolution before us. Moved by Commissioner Rukavina. Is there
Second.
supported by Commissioner Jewell? Discussion. Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Commissioners, you have the consent agenda before you.
So move.
It's been moved by Commissioner Jewell, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Any items on the consent agenda which Commissioners wish to have pulled down for further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Commissioners, we have nothing under the regular agenda, but I am going to ask Auditor Dicklich to come forward. We recently did our exit conference with our auditing firm, and of course, Commissioners, this is the copy that will be circulated for everyone to examine. Auditor Dicklich, would you care to comment on this interview process? It's the first time with a private firm, correct?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. That is correct. This is the first time that St. Louis County has had its financial compliance audit done by a certified public accounting firm, Clifton Larson Allen. Prior to that, it had always been done by the state auditor. And under new provisions of state laws, several years ago, 2 years ago actually, we notified the state auditor, the county did, that we were going to put the audit out for bids. And we also did invite not only private firms, but the state auditor as well. The state auditor chose not to bid, so they were not considered in this round. Now that going forward, I assume that the county board will do the same thing in the future as the need arises. The good news is that with our first private auditing firm, again, there was an unmodified opinion, which is a great opinion. Again, St. Louis County's financial records and compliance, et cetera, is the tops. We had no significant findings at all. And I want to share this today with you. I know I did send copies of the report, I believe, to all members of the commission after the meeting took place a week ago, last Friday. So it's a great result. We're looking forward to. There was a lot of work for the financial and accounting staff. Anytime you're going through a first-time audit, there's a lot of work, both by the auditing firm as well as the entity being audited. But now that we've gotten to know each other, are familiar with each other's processes, papers, documents, etc., should be much smoother going forward. The important thing is that this did save the taxpayers of the county quite a bit of money, and we do have the same auditing firm on contract to do the audit next year. I think also in the coming weeks, in speaking with administration, we have discussed, and you probably will be hearing something, but we will be bringing a proposal forward to continue the contract for another 2 years beyond that, based on the resolution that was passed by this board last year. So the important thing is, I guess, that the audit was great. Due to other job duties and functions, unfortunately, none of the commissioners could be there at the exit conference, but again, we did provide this information to you, and if anybody wants a paper copy, we certainly can, as Commissioner Nelson showed you, we can certainly get that for you and provide that to you. I'm quite sure that I did send it to you electronically, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask myself or Kristen or Commissioner Nelson or Chair of Budget and Finance, Pete Stauber, Commissioner Stauber. So if there are any questions, I stand for them at this time. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder Dicklage. Questions from the board? I'm certain the members are going to need to go through this document, but Commissioner Boyle.
Alder Dicklage, can you refresh me, what was the cost savings from going from state auditor to this organization?
We're talking roughly $40,000 to $50,000 for 1 year.
Thank you, Auditor Dicklage. And Auditor Dicklage, thank you and your staff for the tremendous amount of work that goes into this. I believe it's the first exit interview I've missed in 16 years, but I was one of those times when two schedules, just one person. The world is not ready to clone me just yet, but like Dolly the sheep, I guess, or anytime soon. Commissioner Rukavina, you're correct in that. And also thank you to Administrator Gray and administration for the tremendous amount of work that goes into this. This document represents months of examination work by the accounting firm and all of the work from our staff that makes it possible. But we are once again receiving the highest level really of review that we can receive, and that's a testimony to the actions of this board as well as our staff. So thank you for bringing that forward today, Auditor Dicklage. Certainly something we can have more conversation about at our upcoming Finance Board workshop if commissioners see that as something that they want to do. With that, and with the permission of this board, we will go into recess and deal with items that we are going into Committee of the Whole on now, potentially get those passed so that they can move forward given our schedule of board meetings. So at this point, we stand in recess.
Do you want to explain to the, public that's still here how the Committee of the Whole works? And
sure, I can
quickly explain
give that a shot.
How we
the St. Louis County Board sees all items for review in a 2-week process. The first set is at the Committee of the Whole. Everything is brought forward at Committee of the Whole. It's a much more relaxed setting where the committee chairs, whether it's environment and natural resources or public safety or public health, those commissioners chair that section of the Committee of the Whole. Items passed at Committee of the Whole move on to the county board meeting, thus giving people a week to review those. On occasion, and I do mean on rare occasion, we will go board, committee, board, given the fact that our next board meeting isn't now until August 7th, 14th. So we have a meeting on August 7th, which is a board workshop. 14th is our next meeting. Some of these items are time sensitive, so we want to get them moving so the contracts can be executed and things can move forward. So that's the reason today to go into recess, and we will reconvene as the St. Louis County Committee of the Whole in 5 minutes. So we stand in recess. Thank you, Tom. That was it. Should have done that. We will call the St. Louis County Board Meeting Committee of the Whole to order. Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell? Here. Commissioner Boyle? Here. Commissioner Olson? Sorry. Commissioner Rukavina?
Commissioner Rukavina is here. He's in the back of the room right now. We'll get him here.
Commissioner Stauber?
Here.
Commissioner Yugovich? Present. And Chair Commissioner Nelson?
Here. Commissioners, we do have the consent agenda before you. Someone care to move it?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Yugovich, supported by Commissioner Olson. Are there items on there, commissioners, that you would care to bring down for further consideration? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried.
That's it.
We'll then move on to our regular agenda. And I will turn to the Chair of Public Works and Transportation Committee, Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. We've got a few things on the agenda for today. First off, it's the Public Works and Transportation Committee. Under Public Works is the Cook Facility Project Construction Manager Services. I believe everyone got a copy of the additional board letter here. It's just a letter explaining who is going to be the construction manager. It'll be, is it McGough? McGough. Okay, McGough Construction of Duluth. So I would move that.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jewell. Mr. Gray, would you frame that for me?
Thank you, Chair Jugovich. And as was noted, the action before the board is to approve an updated and amended professional services contract with McGough Construction in their role as a construction manager at risk. And also, the new news and the update, of course, is we've gone through the bidding process and refreshed our bids from the initial phases 1 and 2 that were discussed with the board earlier in the spring, early summer, to establish a guaranteed maximum price for the new Cook Public Works facility project. And by the way, if you have a chance to drive by, I was talking with Commissioners Nelson and Jugovich the other day about the progress that we're making on that front with the site work, which was one of the earlier phases of work that was approved by this board and is contemplated in this new price point. They're just going gangbusters, so it's really very impressive. I'm going to ask Director Mancuso to talk through the process a little bit here. Tony has been working very closely with Director Faldesi and Deputy Brian Boder on this project. I want to throw a shout out to all three of them and to purchasing for the hard work that they've put into this project. This effectively amends the phase 1 and 2 projects where we got the site work approved. We had the long lead time orders for the steel in particular and concrete panels. This incorporates that and expands it to include all of the items that are noted in the board letter that essentially brings us to the finish line where we think we have and know we have a very solid price point, a not to exceed, which is contemplated now at $21.5 million. And that's a very comprehensive number. Director Mancuso will talk to a few items that we didn't get bids on or the bids didn't meet our specs or satisfaction. Those prices are also contemplated in this figure, but based on dialogue and the final contracts will be included eventually, but are contemplated within this price point. So again, the action before the board is to amend the professional services agreement with McGough and for construction manager at risk and to amend the guaranteed maximum price to $21.5 million. With your permission, Mr. Chair, I turn it over to Director Mancuso to walk through the board as to how we've gotten to this point.
Thanks, Administrator Gray. Commissioners, Toy Mancuso, Property Manager. With us today is Eric Johnson. He's with McGough. He's a project manager. He's sitting in today. So if you have any really hard questions, you want to beat somebody up, he's your guy. No, it's going very well. I think Administrator Gray laid it out real well. Part of the other reason for starting this project earlier, other than the long lead times for the precast and the steel, is they needed to surcharge the soil up there. The soil was not great soil for building on, so they have the thing called surcharging where they pile up dirt on top of it to compress the soil. It kind of pre-compresses the soil before you put the building on. And that's, what, 30 days it has to sit, Eric? 30 days so that it can compress the soil so you have something suitable to build on. That's part of another reason why it was broken into two pieces. But this is just an amendment to the project. Purchasing put all these out for bids, McGough and LHB and the county. Brian Boder really worked hard on this day to day with the team, and they put together these packages. And for the commissioners, I suppose for your information, all of the successful bidders were listed out on here. You see there's a lot of local people got put to work from this. And there were some things that there were no bids at all, And right now, McGough, as Administrator Gray pointed out, McGough had put estimates to those. So in the guaranteed maximum price, we included those estimates. So McGough is really hopeful that they come in under that, because now they have a guaranteed maximum price pretty soon. So we do have some contingency built into it, though, so we should just be just fine. Some of the things that we didn't get bids on were alternates. The fabric structure, the salt dome, and the metal building, they were chosen to be alternates because we're not sure what the bids will come in as, and they are something that can be built later if the bids come in undesirably high. So what happened was those bids, we only had one bidder for each, and both were one was not accepted and the other was kind of disqualified. So those will be rebid, but as I said earlier, McGough has provided estimates for those, so they're all included in the guaranteed maximum price. So they want to get this thing started and closed up, not unlike the Virginia GSC, try to get it buttoned up so people can work through the winter inside, is kind of, I think, what we're all about here. It's the same, it's on pretty much the same track as the Virginia project. Button it up for winter so that all of the tradespeople can keep going on the inside. And other than that, we did a lot of negotiations. Well, the team negotiated this through, and I think we have a good number here and a good project, and I can invite all of you to stop at that site and take a look, and also at the Virginia site and take a look, maybe on your way back. And together, these are our aggregate bond project in 2 phases.
Any questions? Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Yurkovich. I want to really take my hat off to KGM. The men and women of that organization know how to move dirt, and they proved it again at this facility. They have always been a kind of a go-to firm for St. Louis County when it comes to big dirt projects. And again, the progress that they've made up there is phenomenal in my eyes. It's really, really moving along. The Virginia facility, folks, if you haven't heard any complaints about parking, that's because there haven't been any, okay? And the project is moving along. They're pouring footings, sub-footings. It is moving at what I would consider breakneck speed. So we should be very, very pleased with where these 2 projects are, I think, at this point in time of the construction season, given the fact that we've got 3 or 4 solid months ahead of us to button these things up. So with that said, Mr. Chair, thank you for that opportunity.
Mr. Chair, no, you're right, Commissioner. KGM's done a great job out there, and I'm just wondering, maybe you can answer this, or you, Tony. So I see they're moving some unstable soil and filing it today as I drove by. But are they, like, on budget with their contract so far? There's no surprises so far, right?
Commissioner Rukavina, I was going to put a plug in for KGM on this too, and Eric can probably go into greater detail because he's the boots on the ground guy, but they hauling the unsuitable soils off the site, truck time, fuel, it's really expensive. So they worked with McGough to come up, and Brian Boder, to come up with a program that they could leave a lot of this unsuitable stuff on the site and maybe make some berms, not unlike they did at our other projects, Ely and Pike Lake, where you can make some privacy berms so the night when the trucks all go out, the headlights and the beep backup alarms and everything like that. So I think that Eric could probably go into greater detail, but I think there was some savings achieved by, and KGM stepped up to the plate on that and worked with McGough to achieve some savings. Otherwise, that probably would have been a change order for the worse, I would guess. So they've been really good to work with. If Eric has anything to add.
Well, Mr. Chair, and yeah, those are those good hard workers from right around this area.
That's right.
Too, so, but one other question. So the 21.5, was it an actual increase of $2 million, or was it just built in and now we're gonna need, you know, when we jump from 19.5 over to 21.5. And then these no bids and rebids are, as you said, so I'm reassured they're all included in the 21.5 total.
Correct. And also the other aspects of the hard costs of the constructions, there's general conditions for McGough that has to manage this project. They're all built in, which brings it to the 19.5. So it's all inclusive, and we won't get revisited to say that, oh, we have to add this cost or we have to add that cost. And there is a contingency. It's modest, but since we're coming out of the ground now, our contingencies are a lot less fearful than, it's always, the fear is always coming out of in the soil. So the contingency built into this phase of it is more modest. But like I say, KGM and McGough came up with some alternatives to save some money, which would probably come out of the contingency.
And finally, Mr. Chair, to Administrator Gray, so how many county workers do you figure you can put in that building that's there currently when it's all done in that? I mean, you know, 20 from this department, 10 from this department. What do you think you can put in there, Administrator Gray?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we're going to fit more than are here currently. We're going to consolidate our land department functions. We're going to consolidate some of our health and human services. We're going to have a presence that we haven't had in the past. And this will be, I believe, our largest facility outside of Virginia, Hibbing, and Duluth Government Services Center. I think this is our largest public works facility, even without the added capacity that we have for other professional services, the departments, and the ability to serve our residents better in this area. So there's room for growth, and we'll staff it up accordingly.
I can add something.
Well, Mr. Chair, very good answer, but I won't probably be here to hold him to his promise. Maybe somebody else in the audience might be.
So, you know. Suspicion of where you'll always be around. I don't think you're going to go too far, Tommy. What will we do with it?
Breathe a sigh of relief.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have a contract purchase for some trucks. It's a resolution to authorize the purchase of 4 2018 Mack Granite tandem axle diesel trucks from Twin Cities Mack and Volvo of Roseville. I believe these are cabin chassis, and they'll be outfitted later. That being the case, I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Faldesi this morning, and he assured me that all the work will be done, warranty work will be done in Duluth, so we're getting the trucks here, and then we will have in-county service done to them. So I wanted everybody to know we're not going to be running back and forth and getting warranty work done in the Twin Cities area, and we can get it right done right here in St. Louis County. I would move.
Second.
Second by Jewel. Okay. Do we need to have you frame it even? Or?
No, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I
Pretty
think that
self-explanatory.
you highlighted the key fact that there'll be a follow-up as we complete the hydraulics and the other lighting and installation of to make it a complete truck. But this helps take some older trucks off the road and continues to make some modest progress towards a lower maintenance, higher function, higher reliable fleet.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Udrich. You know, it's been a while since I griped about this, but I think it's time we start doing it again. Folks, did you time this train for me? Good job if you did, okay. Folks, there are those in state government that don't believe that these tandem axles are the first line of emergency vehicles that we send out. And the fact of the matter is if those roads aren't open, you can't get ambulances out there, you can't get fire trucks out there, you can't get emergency response vehicles out there. We've proven this time and time again. In the 2012 flood, in this past year, on 2 separate occasions, just in the past several months. Were it not for Public Works, there would be no emergency response out there. And yet they continue to charge us, in this case, $31,286.32 in sales tax. And it's just a tax upon a tax. And it's time. And then here we, of course, then we have that vehicle excise tax too, of $80. I know it sounds like we're beating the drum, but I have to tell you that I miss, Commissioner Rocker never missed this once in the 14 years I served with him. He never missed complaining about sales tax one time. And he was 100% right. On this matter, he was 100% right. And I'm getting to the point where I'm ready to say to the state of Minnesota, we're not paying that sales tax. And you come out and prove to us that these are not emergency vehicles. What are they if they aren't emergency vehicles? What are they? They're essential, and they're out there every time there's an emergency. I'm not going to hold this one up today because we're going board, committee, board. But I will tell you, the next time we don't go board, committee, board, and it's on something like this, you are going to see me talk about just flat not paying it and making them come after us and show us, give us the reason why we have to pay this sales tax based on their statute. Because the statute exempts all emergency vehicles. So, Mr. Chair, and to the rest of the board members here, expect to see that the next go around. This is just a warning for the fact that I'm going to be asking all of us to say, hell no, we're tired of paying this on emergency vehicles. And let's see where it goes. Sometimes you have to stand up. Commissioner Rukavina, you showed me that a few times.
Commissioner Nelson, I couldn't agree more. It's ridiculous. I feel it's ridiculous. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but these are emergency vehicles, and the fact of the matter is, with a vehicle like this, Tony had just mentioned, they're the first ones out at night. When you need to get to work in the morning, when you need to get to an ambulance to your house, or a fire truck, or police for that matter, squads, any kind of law enforcement, you have to have an open road. So I agree with you, and I will back you wholeheartedly, because I think this is, it's ridiculous to pay the tax on an emergency vehicle, or we don't always pay them. I don't know if the public's aware, we don't pay it on emergency vehicle squads and things like that, because that's an emergency, and that's got that classification, and a dump truck or a piece of equipment does not, and I think it's unfair. Commissioner Rukavina.
And you could apply that to a grader and everything else too. But the history behind it is this. So under Governor Arne Carlson, because of escalating costs in human services and particularly in public safety, there was over $1 billion deficit, and he had proposed to cut county aid and local government aid. And because St. Louis County and our cities at the time got huge, really a disproportionate amount of LGA and county government aid, the alternative was to levy a sales tax on vehicles, and that's where it came from. Eventually, the emergency vehicles and the sheriffs and that statewide got it pulled off of their vehicles, but it's been tried many, many times from the townships all the way up. So I don't disagree with you that it's ridiculous, but the alternative at the time was a much harder hit for St. Louis County and the cities in St. Louis County, and so that was the alternative. But you bring up a very good point, Commissioner Nelson, because the mandates that we don't get reimbursed for on a lot of other things, for human services or public safety or whatever, pale in comparison. I mean, this pales in comparison, this tax. I've talked to Commissioner Stauber about it. Now that he's looking at higher office, maybe he doesn't support me, but we've said maybe we should just say we're not doing it. When the Army Corps tells us we can't replace a culvert that's been there for 100 years, we should just put it in and have Attorney Rubin go to court, give him a little money, and just start doing things like that, because it's ridiculous, the mandates we have to meet. And when there's out-of-home placement, which is a very good example for us, where we're mandated and we have to take care of children. They're not to blame for anything. we have to do that, but when there's 95 or 98% coming from our property taxes with their mandate, it's time to put a lot of pressure, but government costs money, and, unfortunately, when we give nice tax cuts to wealthy people in the form of income taxes, whether it's in Washington or St. Paul, everything always drifts down to the property tax system. And that's where the rub comes in. So, couldn't agree with you more, but there are bigger fish to fry as far as what we're paying, because we're ordered to do it by the state or the feds.
I agree. I just think we need to have our voices heard, and maybe it's time we do make a little noise at the end of the day and see where that takes us.
I can try to do that, Mr. Chair.
Rumor has it you're good at that. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The third thing on the agenda today is award of bids for paving, curb, sidewalk replacement projects in Meadowlands. It's a resolution awarding paving, curb, sidewalk replacement projects in Meadowlands to the low bidder of KGM Contractors of Angora. So I would gladly move this. Support by Commissioner Nelson.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the action for the board is to approve an award of a project to the apparent low bidder, KGM, in the amount of approximately $293,000 for projects in Meadowlands. These funds will be from our local road construction levy. And you'll note that there are two amounts broken out. We do have a working agreement with Meadowlands Township to provide some service in kind to complete the entire project. That's noted there, but this is a much-needed project and one that we're very much looking forward to. You'll see that the bids were very compact, a little bit higher than our engineer's estimate, but the total range was under 20,000 for the 5 bidders, so it was quite a tight-knit group. And again, the action before the board is to award to the apparent low bidder, KGM Contractors. And they're not just good at dirt work, they're good at some other things too.
Comments, questions? All those in favor?
Curbs and gutters in Greater St. Louis County. Commissioner Yugovich, I'm all about it.
Absolutely. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I'll turn it back to you, Chair Nelson.
Thank you, Commissioner Yugovich, for Public Works and Transportation. The next item in front of us is under the Finance and Budget Committee. Chair Commissioner Stauber.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. I have one item. It is Board Letter 18354. It's for fire protection, first responder services contracts for unorganized territories, and I will move it. Supported by Commissioner Nelson. Administrator Gray, please.
Thank you, Chair Stauber. Commissioners, as was noted, the action before the board is to authorize the county auditor, who's on point, along with the clerk, who has engaged a lot of time in this effort, so thank you, Phil, to allocate the local levies for provision of fire protection and first responder services in our unorganized territories. The board letter depicts the recommended funding level as determined by the county auditor and the auditor's office. The amount in total is $610,000. This is a modest increase from 2018, the current year, in the amount of $600,000 last year. So there's been a lot of work put in this, and I would turn it to Auditor Dicklich to comment and inform the board of the efforts today to determine these numbers.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Auditor Dicklich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. First of all, I do again, and I thank Administrator Gray for pointing out the hard work that Deputy Auditor and Clerk of the Board Chapman does on this project. He puts together all the numbers. He does all the negotiating and talking to the organizations that the county board ultimately contracts with for this. Several years ago, you may remember that over the years, administration had just gotten these letters and they were updated, and at one point we had 2 organizations bidding for the same area up in the Ely Babbitt area. And at that point in time, the board asked the county auditor's office to get involved with this. So this is, I believe this is the fourth time we're coming forward with detailed numbers. And we've worked with these organizations the past 4 years. In your packet, you do see we only addressed really changes, requested changes, and with those organizations, we review what they submit. And as you look at the very last pages, the contract proposals, if you look at the very last page of that, and we have the totals, one of the things we really focus on is not just the total amount that the board is paying, but the cost per improved parcel. And you can see that with this proposal this year, assuming the board, the committee approves it, and then ultimately the county board approves it, if you look at that back page, under the average share per improved parcel at the 105% levy figure, it's down to $109 per improved parcel. Now that's an average, and we have to recognize that these organizations are serving different areas throughout the county. There are different aspects of the coverage that they're providing, how many calls there are, all of those things. And we do all that. I say we, it's pretty much Deputy Auditor Chapman who's getting all the details, all the number of the calls. He's talking to 911, getting all this data together, putting it into this spreadsheet, and we bring this forward to the board for their consideration. Moving back to the proposed changes for the year, we had 6 organizations requesting changes, i.e. increases, and we reviewed those. One of the organizations, we did ask them to go back and sharpen the pencil a little bit as we looked at what their average charges were. And they did ask to include an additional unorganized area of coverage for this county board. And we did modify it. Phil spoke with him. He and I are in conversation. He's reviewing this sheet with me throughout the period. But he's been doing all the discussions. I just want to let you be aware of that. And he's done a great job. And this year, based on, if you look at the proposed changes, the 2019 increase total levy is 1.71%, which I think is very appropriate, very good job. One thing I just want to point out to the board, one of the things that we try to do when we're working with these organizations, we want these organizations to thrive and exist, because without them, we wouldn't have any coverage for these areas. So, you know, when we look at this, we take all those factors into consideration and make sure that these organizations are healthy and are able to survive. Recognizing also, we go and look at what they're charging their own organized. A lot of these are for organized townships, and we check to see what they're charging their own district. So we do a full comparison in here, and again, Phil does a great job. He works with our tax department manager, Brandon Larson, on this as well. And so I want to give him some kudos, because they assist us in providing this data to the board. So I guess I've said enough. If there are any questions, I guess I'd open it up for questions at this point.
Board members, Commissioner Rukavina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, Don, I just have a question. So the Colvin increase, which is the largest one, is because they're taking on a full unorganized township?
Another
never covered
unorganized
before?
area. They wanted more, but we negotiated that with them, recognizing the number of calls in that area, et cetera.
And I know that you, in the past, when you took this over, have asked these volunteer fire departments to justify their increases. And you've done a great job. And of course, you brought up the fact that Morris and Babbitt kind of would come in and argue, and Morris said they could do it for much cheaper for the taxpayers. But it never happened. But, you know, if you look at the members, these charges are all over the board. So you have like Babbitt charging $80,000 approximately, and over the last 5 years they've had 30 fire calls and EMS calls. And then you have Pike Sandy Britt, which has had 154 over the last calls over the last 5 years, and they charge $50,000. So, you know, I know it is what it is right now, but maybe in the future, Mr. Chapman, who does a great job, can ask them, you know, why there's these discrepancies, because if you look, they're all over the board. Like Morris Township is taking care of 5 unorganized townships, had 45 calls over those years, and is charging like about a third of what Babbitt charges. And since most of these, I think Commissioner Jugovich has a couple unorganized townships, Commissioner Nelson has, I think, 7 or 8, and I have the rest of the, I think, 55. It, you know, it gets brought up to me a lot, especially when you put the unorganized township tax on it. But I do have a question I should have asked 3 years ago that I haven't when this started. So when Pike, Sandy, which are organized townships, and I happen to live in one of them, and then Britt, we have both the Leander area and the Sand Lake area, do they levy on my taxes the same equal amount? We're not double hitting the unorganized townships, are we? I mean, I hope I'm paying the same as they are in Britt and Leander, as an example.
Auditor Dicklich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rickovine, and members of the committee. I guess to back up, philosophically, what we didn't want to do when we took this over, there were contracts in place with these organizations, and they were all over the board already. But we didn't want to just go in and start chopping and doing that kind of thing. So my philosophy on this when we took over, and the board can change that if they want, my philosophy was, let's do no harm to what's in place, but we'll start asking as they come forward for increases, they'll have to justify it. And so we didn't go back and restructure every one of these contracts based on some base number. For example, you know, you mentioned Babbitt. One of the things, you know, that's the City of Babbitt Fire Department. They have contracts in place, et cetera. Their costs are a lot higher than the volunteer fire departments. So, you know, when the Morris Fire Department, Fall Lake, actually it's the Morris Fall Lake Fire Department, put their bid in, there were some difference in the cost. And as you will recall, that we went through quite a discussion, and the board decided to stay with where they were at that point in time. There are different costs for these departments, and I think that needs to be recognized. Now, certainly if there's competitive bidding out there, that, you know, the board can make their decision, and they did in that case. It may require the City of Babbitt, they had their attorney come and talk to the board, et cetera, at that point in time. So, you know, as I say, you see the charges are all over the board, and I don't disagree, and yet the costs are all over the board for these organizations too. They are not the same. You would expect to see a little more consistency, I agree, and as you will remember, last year we went through quite a discussion with the Evergreen Volunteer Fire Department, because they kept their costs so low with everybody over time that they kind of put themselves in kind of a difficult financial situation. So I think this board last year, we did grant them a pretty healthy increase, but in terms of the cost per unit, it was a reasonable increase, but they hadn't kept up. So we want to, I think the board wants to be cautious about how they do that. And again, philosophically, I didn't want to go backwards and start doing a full, complete analysis. because those were historical things. I said, let's take this going forward, and as they come forward for increases. And those that are higher, what I'm hoping to see over time is that they're going to be reluctant, if they're making money on these and their costs and their viable entities, I don't think they're going to be coming forward because they know they're going to have to justify it. So I think over time, my expectation is that things will balance themselves out.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, just to reassure me then, so the Pike Sandy Brick increase is because they got 7 new firefighters. And, you know, they wanted to get EMS equipment and protective gear and everything. That's justified. But again, my question is, am I going to help pay for that? They're not putting that whole thing on the 2 unorganized townships. They're putting it on all 4, the 2 organized and the unorganized. Is that your understanding?
Yep. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rukavina, and members of the committee, that's how we try to do that analysis. We do look, we suspect that the fire department for those 2 townships, those organized townships, they're sharing in that cost. That's our expectation. So
maybe I should ask Mr. Chapman. He might know the answer.
Commissioner Rukavina, really, to
Why
that
don't you
point,
just check on that, though?
We'll double check. We'll double check. I think that Deputy Auditor Chapman probably looked at it, but we don't have those numbers.
I mean, I can understand Colvin, they're taking over an unorganized township, so they would pay for that. But when you're getting equipment, because you're getting new members, it should be spread over all the members, including the organized townships, in that volunteer fire department's jurisdiction. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's our expectation as well. So we'll look at the detail on that and get back to you on it.
You know, when you're short and fat, you got to fight. You have to fight to be fair all your life. So I'm just trying to be fair for my constituents.
So are you preaching to the choir?
Yes. You're not fat. You're just short.
Any other comments, commissioners? Clerk Chapman, thanks for your work on this. I know it was tedious work and a lot of time spent, so thank you for bringing this forward. So, with that, all in favor of said resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes. Back to you, Chair Nelson.
Thank you, Commissioner Stauber, Chair of Finance and Budget. The next items in front of us are under the Central Management and Intergovernmental Committee. Commissioner Jewell.
Chair Nelson, I have 2 items. The first of these is a position reallocation of Director of Victim Witness Services, Victim Witness Investigator classification. I'd move it. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Rukavina, and I'd look to administration to frame.
Thank you, Chair Jewell. The action before the board is to approve the reallocation of a full-time equivalent position from a supervisory role to a staff role in our Victim and Victim Services investigator classification. Consistent with board policy, this is more than a 2-step impact, so we bring it to the board. And this is the fundamental issue here is spreading the supervisory responsibility that was in place at one time to our division heads within the attorney's office, and having more ability to provide firsthand service supporting our prosecutors and victims and witness service items and individuals that are needing of that support. This is actually a salary savings that will be reflected in the 2019 budget.
Is there any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed? Motion carries. The second item under my committee is Public Records and Property Valuation Department, City of Hibbing, Office Space and Support Agreement. I would move it. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Jugovich, and I'd look to administration.
Thank you, Chair Jewell. Commissioners, the action before the board is to approve actually an extension of the current agreement for an additional term with the City of Hibbing to provide space and support to our assessment services provided at the Hibbing City Hall. So the terms are highlighted. This has been a great arrangement. The City of Hibbing has been a very good partner this serves their residents well locally, and so we continue to have that arrangement with the space being provided by the city, clerical support to help better serve their residents, and it's a continuation of the agreement that's been in place for some time. So this is to re-up this 5-year agreement consistent with the terms of the prior agreement, and kudos to the City of Hibbing for being a good partner in this.
Commissioner Rukavina.
Administrator Gray, you know, when I looked at this the other day, I didn't really understand what was going on here. So what is mutually beneficial for Hibbing to provide free space to the county and then actually pay for a clerk for our staff? When did this ever come about like this? And is there other situations where cities give us free? I know that I think the sheriffs have a free space in Cook, but I mean, they don't get clerical staff. So how did this ever come about like this? Because it seems like we're getting a great deal and Hibbing's paying for it.
Chair Jewell, Commissioner Rukavina, this was an agreement that we entered into with the city, again, 5 years ago, and there's a transition point. There are services that are unique to the City of Hibbing. They wanted to have the presence in City Hall. They wanted to have this ability to provide a higher level of service to their residents, and there's also a continuation of this function whereby this employee remains a employee of the city, not of the county. So that individual is assisting in providing service to residents of the City of Hibbing, and that's the basis for it. So we have had a good arrangement. The space has worked out great, and we've been able to provide a high level of service to the second largest city in the county.
But Mr. Chair, what is the high level of service they're getting, that they're paying for it, that other cities don't pay for, and do the other cities not get a high level of service?
Well, Mr. Chair, that's not the case. We've assumed this, and I would really need a couple minutes to update or get the background on this. When we dealt with this originally through then Director Monticelli, there was a sound rationale, and it's just escaping me at this point, quite frankly, beyond the fact that this person gets to continue in a capacity working for the city, and it helps the residents further. So give me a couple minutes, and between the committee of the whole of this, we'll...
That's okay. You can get back to me. I was just puzzled by it because I don't know what benefit this mutually beneficial arrangement is. And are they getting employees then that stayed from the assessor's office that were going to get moved? I don't know. So maybe in the future you can, and Commissioner Nelson might know the answer because he's been around here a long time, but I don't know.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Jewell. Look, this was an agreement made with the City of Hibbing when we took over the assessor services. And it was a tremendous benefit to the city of Hibbing, Duluth, Virginia. I mean, we took on, St. Louis County took on the city of Duluth's case, it was $500,000 or more out of their budget. In the city of Hibbing's case, I believe it was just under $300,000, $270-some thousand. This is off the top of my head, so I'm close. But so when we took that over, and we struggle for space in Hibbing. That's one of our issues in Hibbing is the old Mesaba Clinic building that we turned into a Health and Human Services and Veteran Services and everything else is full, wall to wall. The courthouse is basically full, wall to wall. I mean, there just is not a lot of extra space. So when we got into this arrangement with the City of Hibbing, they afforded us the opportunity to continue to use the existing space that their assessors had used for years. In fact, then they added some space for us because we added extra assessors there to reduce travel time within our assessor's office. Because prior to that, some of the areas right around Hibbing were being assessed by people from Virginia, okay? So it just made some sense. That's why they put this package together. I think it is contingent upon, I believe that upon the retirement of this clerical individual, that this situation is going to change, but the city of Hibbing saw value in maintaining the continuity within the existing office, and people have the sense that nothing has really changed, because it really has not. In fact, we took on their assessors as well. Same as with the city of Virginia. We took on their assessors, and in many cases, we took on their staff. In Hibbing's case, that support staff has stayed with the city, but the city is saving money, a lot of money. And so is city of Virginia, so is the city of Duluth. They're all saving money by us doing all of the assessments.
So, Mr. Chair, then you answered my question. So we kept their employees and they became our employees?
Yes.
And
Some
there
of
was
them.
no place to house them?
Correct.
But, and so I understand that part, but I don't know why they would have to pay for clerical staff. That's fine. If Libby wants to do it, it's none of my business, but I was just puzzled by the whole thing. You've explained some of it away now, so thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, we did have similar arrangements with both the city of Duluth and the city of Virginia in the transition, okay? And I believe Virginia has fully transitioned, even though we still keep some of the office space. Hibbing has not fully transitioned, okay? But it was transitional as we took over assessment throughout St. Louis County. And this transition is still happening.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now it makes a little
Any
sense.
further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carried. Back to you, Chair Nelson.
Thank you, Chair of Central Management Intergovernmental Committee, Chair Commissioner Jewell. We are at that point in our Committee of the Whole where Commissioners' comments and concerns would be of the day. I will ask Clerk Chapman to please put together our consent agenda for our, as we go back into board while we're doing this. Commissioner Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to update, since we're not having a meeting next week, we will be having a nice little press conference early next week with basically the final touches of 4th Street, which was one of the bigger projects St. Louis County has ever done in the city of Duluth. We went from 6th Avenue East all the way up to Holy Rosary, and then all the way up Wallace. That was a total, and then Wallace all the way up to Mount Royal. City of Duluth, in their own part, did a mill and overlay from 6th Avenue East to Mesabi. So you're talking about the best 5-6 miles in the city of Duluth now that is coming totally to the end, and got some great trees on the boulevards, 20 years later, best looking trees in the city, and I just want to thank the board and that half-cent sales tax that pushes through, and this street will be good for 30 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. And were it not for your courage, Commissioner Boyle, voting for the 0.5% sales tax, that 4th Street project would not have happened. They'll all line up and they'll all take credit. All line up and they'll all take credit. But the commissioners down there should be proud of the fact that they supported that, because were it not for those dollars, that project would not happen. And it, again, there'll be plenty of them there taking credit for what happened, but I know where that credit is deserved. Okay, so additional comments? I'm sorry, Commissioner Joel?
Nothing.
Others? Attorney Mackey, you have some paperwork that you want to present us. I asked Attorney Mackey to do this during the board meeting so that it was on the official ledger, official minutes of proceeds of this meeting. So she's got some language on a PILT settlement that, quite frankly, is what it is. So just passing it out. Did you have some comments you wanted to make with it, Attorney Mackey?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This memo is from our office. It basically is notifying the board that we intend to submit paperwork to opt in to a PILT lawsuit that was initially brought by Kane County, Utah. Kane County, Utah was underpaid a very significant amount of PILT during the years 2015 through 2017. They commenced the case, and the federal claims court judge certified all underpaid counties as a class. So Kane County did the heavy lifting. we are able to submit a piece of paperwork and get our underpayment in the total amount of $13,000 for those 3 years once we submit the paperwork, which we intend to do by September, which is the deadline. There's more information about the background of the lawsuit attached to the memo. If you have any questions, you can contact our office, or specifically Nick Campanario, who has been the attorney who's worked through this.
Very good, thank you, Attorney Mackey. Our friends in Pilt, folks, are the western counties, because they all have similar situations to our own. Up here, of course, it's only St. Louis, Lake, and Cook that have some Pilt issues. But when you go out west, it's pretty much every county from Montana to New Mexico, from Colorado to California that have these sorts of issues. And again, different commissioners take on different tasks. This one, 2 commissioners, predecessors of this board's, people that I worked with for a shorter period of time, Commissioner Claire Nelson and Commissioner Dennis Fink, really worked hard on Pilt issues, and they're kind of where we're at today because of that work 15 years ago. But our friends in Pilt are out west. So here's an example of one of our friends out there getting a favorable judgment that we can tag on to. Any further comments from commissioners at this point? Commissioner Riccovinia, when you're smiling at me, I worry.
I was going to comment on the whole Pilt thing.
Oh boy!
But I don't want to blow up the meeting. So
Thank
I'll
you.
just keep my mouth.
Thank you.
Not feeling good. Because it all comes from my district, except for one bit of federal land in Commissioner Jugovich's district, and it all goes into the general fund, and it all goes into the black hole.
We thank you for that, Commissioner Riccovinia.
And the Ty Blotnick money, which is $2.5 million for the BWCA that harmed Ely and their school district and Tower Sedan and their school district's economy, doesn't help their economy. It doesn't stay with them people, with those institutions. It goes into the general fund and down into the black hole. Just so that's all I can say. Thank you.
The black hole is somewhere near Cotton, I think.
I think it's
thank you,
just when you go over the hill and the Public Works garage there.
With that, and seeing no further comments, the Committee of the Whole is adjourned, and we will go back into our county board meeting. I'll let the record reflect those members all still present from the earlier. I don't believe we have to take roll on the re-entry of the board.
Chair, did I get recorded? I was in the bathroom when you started.
You did. You did, Commissioner Riccovinia. I made sure that you were recorded as being in the back of the room.
I thought.
Okay.
Just said he's in his chair, but we can't see him.
Anyhow, but you were recorded. Clerk Chapman, that's correct. He was recorded as present. Yes. All right. With that, we are back into our board meeting. And again, letting the record reflect all of those members present. Commissioners, everything that we covered under the consent agenda at the Committee of the Whole, as well as all items that were on the regular agenda, all were passed 7-0. So they would all be appearing as a single consent agenda. Is there someone here that cares to move that? Move consent. Move consent. Commissioner Boyle. Is there, first I'm going to get support for it. Okay. Commissioner Riccovinia, and I will turn to you. Is there support for that? Support? Okay. Commissioner Riccovinia, are there items you'd like to be pulled off?
Yes, I was out of the room, so I'd like to pull 340 and 345, and it shouldn't take long. I just have a short question on both of them.
Okay, so 340,
And 345.
item number 3 on the consent agenda, and 345, which would be item number 8 on the consent agenda, have been pulled for further consideration. The consent agenda has been moved by Commissioner Boyle, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. All those in favor signify by the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. We now have one item under Public Works and Transportation Committee. It is acquisition of right-of-way for a reclaim and overlay to SAW 6 in Hermantown. Is there someone who would care to move that?
I'll move it.
Moved by Commissioner Stauber, supported by Commissioner Boyle. Administrator Gray, would you care to?
Here.
give us a little bit of a primer on that before we go into discussion?
Well, Chair Nelson, Commissioners, the action before the board is to authorize the acquisition of right-of-way for a county state aid highway, Highway 6 in Hermantown. This is a federal project between Midway Road and Westburg Road, and this is standard procedure for purchasing right-of-way for federal or local projects for that matter as well.
Very good. Thank you, Administrator Gray. Commissioner Rukavina,
Well,
questions?
Mr. Chair, I was just wondering, so this is a federal project, and I was just wondering, though, what does it cost in Hermantown or in Duluth versus in a rural area like mine somewhere to purchase the right-of-way? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, and again, Commissioner Nelson might know, we never had right-of-ways, official right-of-ways on many, many, many of our roads, and now that we're doing all this road work, we're doing what probably was the correct thing to do 100 years ago, but nobody cared back then. So, does anybody know, Administrator Gray, what this, it looks to me like to being 4.5 40s, is that right, Commissioner Stauber? Yeah. And then my second part of the question is this, Mr. Chair. We had Rams come to our meeting about putting in broadband, and I don't know the broadband situation in Hermantown, but when we're there doing this, and I imagine we'll be digging up culverts, because a lot of this is driving down those roads are rural, homes that are out in the country, so they're going to dig up their culvert when they're doing the road project. Would it be, and this is what Rams asked us, smart, and Commissioner Stauber might help me out, to just take a piece of that orange pipe and stick it up on either side of that culvert so that someday if they come with high-speed internet and fiber optic, it's there. And it wouldn't cost that much more if you're putting in a culvert or monkeying with it to put that broadband orange tube in there. So have we had a discussion on the broadband thing since we had the presentation? And Commissioner Stauber, would it make sense to do something like that when we're doing it? I guess that's my question.
Administrator Gray. First of all, before Administrator Gray, I want, at that Public Works workshop, within the answer that Director Faldesi gave to us, one of the things he said is, we are currently doing that with all of the utilities. We offer them the opportunity during construction. But I would point out, this is not time sensitive in the sense that we're probably a year in advance. If there's more questions that you would like answered on this in terms of this purchase, we could certainly table this motion and afford you the opportunity to talk to Director Faldesi.
I just want to make sure that we dig once, as they said, and we do something that makes sense if it doesn't cost us much money. And I'm not saying that whether it's a CenturyLink or whoever serves Hermantown, maybe at this point they don't want to do it. But could we do it? Because that orange tubing can't cost that much money. And since we got a construction company that's doing the work, to just put that tube there, leave it sticking out like they do on either side of those culverts we're going to be monkeying with, if it makes sense. But, I mean, Rams did come to us. It's probably not so much Hermantown as it is other rural parts of the county and out in the country, so to speak. But I know Hermantown can be very rural in places too. So I'm just wondering if it made sense, and given the presentation by Rams, if we're going to do anything.
Administrator Gray, I think, again, I'm going to suggest that perhaps this is a motion we could certainly table and have further dialogue on, if that's something that you see as making sense.
Thanks, Chair Nelson. Commissioners, each and every project, Commissioner Nelson is exactly right. We work with utilities to look at future needs, including telecom. I would add, just anecdotally in conversations with Director Faldesi and others, the ability to run, the least of the costs is actually running the utility line before, during, after, or never on a project. And I think that that's a conversation we can have. This resolution before the board is to authorize us to proceed with the acquisition of the right-of-way. I think we will have time to have a more enhanced discussion around this if the board so desires. We certainly are reaching out to the city and the utilities, as is our standard operating procedure on this front. So I don't think it's necessary, personally, from an administrative standpoint, to table this, but we would certainly look into the input. But again, it is our practice to look at telecom and other utility providers for needs as we acquire right-of-way. And that would be actually to install the tubing or whatever it might be, the conduit. That would be a decision as part and parcel of the project, not necessarily of the right-of-way acquisition. So again, this is merely about the right-of-way acquisition to prepare us for a project which is a 2019 project. So we have time to talk about it.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Thank you, Commissioner Medina. I would add that some years back, the county board, I can't remember exactly how many years, but we made the decision to go from the prescriptive easements, which we technically have on every road that is a public road, to acquired easements. Commissioner Rukavina mentioned that, and that was a sea change for this county board to go to those acquired easements. But I think it's a good policy in the sense that by acquiring those easements, it gives us a lot more control over utilities. It gives us a lot more control over our lee side of the ditch area. Okay, so the acquisition of these easements, we build in as we present these projects to the federal government and as we present them to MnDOT, we build in that acquisition. Even though we currently hold the prescriptive easement, the objective is to again broaden that to that acquired easement, again giving us, I think, more control. It gives our public works a lot better working position as we move forward in the maintenance of those roads. So, Commissioner Rukavina, that sea change from prescriptive to acquired, if my memory is right, was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10 to 12 years ago. So, okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion before you on the acquisition signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. The other item that we have in front of us is under our Public Safety and Corrections Committee. Chair Commissioner Olson. Yes, I'm sorry, we're in board. Chair Commissioner Olson, would you care to move this resolution? Thank you.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and supported. Thank you for redirecting me and getting me back on track here. I will turn to Administrator Gray to bring us up to speed on this issue as well.
Well, Chair Nelson and Commissioners, the action before the board is to declare a state of local disaster area for St. Louis County for the severe weather events that occurred, a couple notably between June 16th and July 12th of this year. This positions the county to request state and federal disaster relief funds, quite frankly, as standalone events unique to St. Louis County, as Commissioner Olson is aware, and Sheriff Lippman and Dewey Johnson on the emergency management side. We didn't meet the threshold, but recent actions by the governor and the state have consolidated multiple counties, multiple events throughout the state of Minnesota. Therefore, we're able to kind of piggyback, and the number meets the state and, more significantly, the federal guidelines for receiving assistance. So this is to position us to be part of that disaster filing by the state and in conjunction with it. So my recall is that on the St. Louis County front, I think we're looking at probably $250,000 of eligible damage items. Do you recall, Commissioner Olson, is that about right, I think? And so this, we would not have met that threshold standalone. So now we need to declare this so that we can be part of the comprehensive state declaration.
Very good. Moved by Commissioner Olson, supported by Commissioner Rukavina. Commissioner Rukavina.
Well, I just wanted to discuss this because, you know, in one of those storms, I lost power for like 14 hours. I was a lucky one. You know, I have a little generator that I didn't blow myself up, and I didn't put it in the house. I, you know, plugged in my freezer after a little while, got nervous, but I think there were people up here and that were out. I know friends of mine in Embarrass were out for over 24 hours. And recently, I got a letter from a lady up in Ely, and she copied also former Commissioner Forsman, who was on the Lake Country Power Board, about doing a joint project between our Public Works and Lake Country and clearing some of our right-of-ways where these trees are, you know, falling down and these storms and cutting off people's power. Because in today's society, when you don't have electricity, you live in the country, you know, you're in big trouble. Your toilets don't work, you don't have any water, and so just a suggestion that, and I think I forwarded to Administrator Gray, and I think, and to Director Foldesy, and I talked to former Commissioner Forsman about it. Maybe we could do something jointly that would, you know, help our constituents and help our crews that aren't going to have to be out there after a storm clearing up trees on the road, because we were proactive and cleared those right-of-ways and worked with them. You know, they do own part of Lake Country Power. One of their businesses is a tree clearing business, so maybe we could work with them and do it. And that's the only reason I brought it up, because Lake Country Power is in here also in this resolution. And I don't know, you know, we got Dan here. I don't know if you lost power, but, or Mr. Bestie back there, but some people were out a long time. And if we can prevent that and save our road crew from being out there clearing trees and everything else by being proactive, I just thought I'd bring it up to the board. And so,
Thank you, Commissioner Rukavina. Commissioner Boyle?
I just wanted to mention our windstorm from 2 years ago in Duluth. East Duluth had lost some power for 5-6 days.
well, we've, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Boyle, we've been...
Commissioner Rukavina, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention
Had
that.
you concluded?
I was done.
Okay, Commissioner
We've been
Rukavina.
out in the wintertime where we've been 5-6 days also, so.
And from the chair, I want to comment on this. It's something that we've been working on, I believe, in Public Works for quite some time. One of the problems that you have, and I'm going to point this out, this is in my own neighborhood, okay? I'm lucky. My lines are fed from both directions. I don't lose power, but everybody behind me does. And we've got two neighbors out there that will not allow them to remove the trees that are, every time we lose power, are the culprits, okay? So, I mean, there's a lot of work to go around here, okay? And I think part of it is to gain a broader understanding amongst our constituency that, you know, that it is necessary to remove these dead trees and get them out of the way. And one of them is a former employee of ours that just, there it is. Every time there's a power storm, there's a balsam over the lines, or a windstorm, there's a balsam tree over the lines, and we don't want them cut off. We want our cute little road in. Well, everybody has to be part of the solution, and let's not forget Lake Country Power, Minnesota Power as well, because that's, and I think that's a good idea that we have dialogue between our Public Works and them. And I think, Commissioner Yugovich, I would certainly encourage that and encourage that department to work with them whenever possible to whether it's a joint effort or however we can accomplish it, because those same trees are also over the road at the same time. So that's my comment on that piece, having been around in 2012 and some of the others that were pretty devastating. Any further consideration or dialogue on this? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. A motion to adjourn by Commissioner Jewell, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned. 13 minutes prior.